Greetings and welcome to That Extra 20 Pounds. It's that extra 20 pounds that I see and hear everywhere these days. Like all the people that are filling out my assessment forms for organic stretching, the ones that I'm having conversations with. What is your goal? And almost before being pain-free and flexible, it's lose that 20 pounds. Well, I can appreciate what you're talking about. It was on my list every other year from the time I was 20 to 57, I think. And I'd get it off and it would come back. And sometimes it was more than 20 pounds. I fully appreciate exactly what you're going through. I'd say I probably went through just about every program and every diet that was out there from the time I was 20 to 57. In the course of all that time, I probably lost somewhere close to 400 pounds. Imagine that. That's a lot. In the last 19 years, I haven't lost a single pound. Imagine that. But I didn't need to, and that's why I didn't lose it. I've been happy, healthy, fit, and not on a diet for 19 years. I just have a really good way to eat that is absolutely balanced and perfect for the needs of my body and what I want to do. I have exactly what I need. So my discovery 19 years ago and how that happened was here in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. I got here on my boat at the end of my journey, and I was about 28 pounds more than I am right now. And, I was kind of used to it. I wasn't even thinking about it. But what happened, I'd been here a few months, and there was a woman that everyone I met seemed to know. And she'd walk by and everybody'd go, "Ah, was that Sue? What's happened? Wow, she has really changed. I wouldn't have known her." And I wondered what Sue looked like before. I had no idea. She looked pretty good now, but I couldn't imagine what she must have looked like. That she had gone up to visit her sister in Texas, where she was in the special treatment program for cancer patients. And she said, "My sister looked younger, healthier, more fit, and far better than I did." And it turned out to be from the book, The Zone, and the program that was created by Dr. Barry Sears. So I'd never heard of it. I'd been gone and off sailing, so I wasn't current on anything like that. Well, I looked into it, and the nutritionists all said, "Oh, this is, not a good program at all." They likened it to Dr. Atkins, which it's nothing like that. They had a lot of things that they didn't really understand about the program. A lot of misconceptions. These are certified nutritionists. I was reading articles by them. They said, "Well, you have to be a nuclear physicist to understand this book and get anything out of it." Well, I'm neither a nutritionist nor a nuclear physicist, but I dove into that book with lots of passion, and I made a lot of changes, all to the good. I have not regretted for 1 minute that I did what I did 19 years ago. So I changed the way I ate. I changed everything about my kitchen, what was available in my kitchen. To some extent, the way I cooked, certainly the way I thought about food, to the way I shopped in the grocery store, and to the way I made choices in restaurants. All those things changed. And after not many weeks, my waist had gotten smaller. And instead of what used to happen whenever I would go on a diet and get, go through a big weight loss kind of effort, when my cheeks would sink in and my fingers got skinny, everything but my middle section, this time it started with the middle. And of course, I was absolutely thrilled. It was only maybe 3 months at the most, maybe less. I had lost 5 inches off my waist. and I looked fit and I felt great. I had tons of energy. Now, it took keeping track, a lot of keeping track, and a lot of figuring out what I was going to eat, planning, and all of that. But before long, it just became automatic. I really didn't have to give it a thought. I knew the numbers, and I could put through in my mind my meals for the day or make choices in the restaurants. And what I changed about the system most was the quality. And that I deviated a bit from exactly what, well, Sears said, for example, you could be in the zone and go to McDonald's for all your meals. Well, that wasn't going to make it with me. I wanted a higher quality nutritionally than that. But he wasn't promoting that by any means. I'm just saying that he didn't address quality overall to the extent that I ended up doing as I went along in the program. But in the beginning, the one thing I did really follow, which was a great thing to do, and that was I basically shopped only on the edges of the store. The only thing I got in the middle was toilet paper and soap and oats. I did use oats every day, a small quantity of them. So I wasn't getting packaged, prepared, processed food. For the most part, everything was fresh. And I think that quality-wise, that advice from him was tops. And I happily followed that. Today, in my choices, I've gone even further. I'm pretty much organic. Anytime I can buy organic, I do. And I buy local. And so I am watching that quality even more strongly. And I evaluated all of the vegetables and such that I eat to find the ones that produce the highest nutrient content for me. So my choices today are a little bit changed. I create my own recipes, so things that I used to like, I've modified the way I cook. Instead of buying regular pasta, I grate zucchini, steam it al dente, and put my homemade pasta sauce over the top of it, or tomato sauce over the top of it. So one can follow this program and tailor it and make it work for their particular desires and the way they want to eat. So what do I leave out today? Well, I don't do grains, so I don't do rice or wheat things, unless they have been processed in a way, and I say I don't eat processed food. Well, I use a little bit of protein powder now and then, which I'll explain later on. So that's got to be processed to some extent. But very, very little of that. I leave out all the beans and the things that fall into that category, that family of legumes. And I don't do sugars, basically in any kind. Now and then a little bit of agave syrup, which is lower glycemic than any of the other sugars. Definitely not any phony sugars. I think those are terrible. They're full of chemicals. So I leave those out. Sodas, no, there's no sodas in my diet at all. And basically it's whole, fresh, and delicious. I don't need all the sugars to sweeten it. If it's got fresh fruit in it, that's the natural sweetener. And those are some of the decisions that I've made and what I leave out. I don't do very much red meat. If it is, it's open pastured, grass-fed more or less. If I have eggs, I want them to be from happy hens. So I'm making those choices. Very aged cheeses tend to be really, really high fat, so I don't do those. But I find other ways of covering those needs in my diet. And I do have treats now and then. If I go out for a coffee with a friend, I'll order a cookie, maybe one. I don't buy bags of them and bring them home because can't stop. That's my addiction, cookies. So they don't come in my house. I'll have a little bit of really dark, I don't want to say bitter, but more or less bitter chocolate. I love it. The really dark, low or no sugar. So I get something that I feel is a treat. I don't feel like I'm being denied. So why did I go this way? Well, when I read Dr. Sears' reasons behind developing the program he did, he had personal ones for sure. Because every man in his family had died, like uncles and his father and so on, before 50, and he didn't want to have that happen. So he looked for a way to live longer. And for him, food is the best medicine that we can get. I think that's a very strong statement. He, at that time, had more patents for drug delivery systems than anyone in the world. In terms, that's like through patches or delayed delivery, all the different methods. But for himself, he said, really, food is the best medicine. Part of what guided his program, guided him in his decision to pursue it, came from a Nobel Peace Prize awarded in the 70s for medicine. And it was awarded to a doctor from Iceland for his discovery of eicosanoids. So I can't get too technical here. I'm not a doctor, so I won't try to explain what they are in highly technical terms, but this is the way that I understand them. So we have some super hormones in our body, our bodies, yours, mine, everybody's. They're basically 94 of these, and they're arranged in pairs. And their job is to control everything that goes on inside. And to give you an example, one of the pairs is for the blood. And what it does is it keeps the blood thin enough that it doesn't leave plaque inside the blood vessels. So those of you that have to take a blood thinner know that having thinner blood is a way to prevent the buildup of plaque inside the blood vessels. There's a partner to that, and its job is to make sure that your blood can get thick enough to coagulate in the event you have an injury. And so the two need to be in balance. And then there's another pair, and that has to do with your immune system. In the immune system, if you get a cut, you have an injury, and there's contamination, you've got bacteria, you've got germs, the immune system immediately sets in motion to send out the soldiers to fight any infection that might be going to happen in that area. And so that turns this area red, it gets hot, and it's all because the soldiers are in there doing their job. There's a partner in the immune system, and it's the one that says, okay, guys, you can come back home now. You've done your job. You don't need to do any more. So it shuts it down. It shuts the response down for that area. Okay, what happens in the system when it's not in balance is that the soldiers don't get called home. Okay, and we end up with a system that's out of balance. The immune system can't seem to turn itself down or turn it off. And that's where diabetes 2, Alzheimer's, heart disease, and so many more things come from an overly active immune system. And it is not a good situation. So how do we keep these things in balance? Dr. Sears tells us that we keep them in balance by the way we eat. That when we balance, when you're eating carbohydrates, your body triggers one response. When you eat proteins, it triggers another one. And when those two things match, we don't store that excess carbohydrates. They don't get converted to bad cholesterol, which is what happens when they're kept in the system. They're gotten rid of. What we can't use for energy is gone. So that is an extremely important function. And having our food balanced helps control that. So that also helps control these super hormones that I'm talking about, the eicosanoids. I'm not sure they're actually hormones, but they kind of act in a similar way. So the other thing is getting enough sleep, getting enough exercise, and not getting stressed. So those 4 things will help control the eicosanoid pairs to stay balanced. So with that in mind, I was thrilled to have this system because I was losing inches and I was healthy. And yes, I wanted to stay on that. It's not a diet. I don't ever think I'm on a diet. It's just the way I've chosen to eat. And it isn't something that you have to stop doing. There's no reason to stop doing it. It doesn't do anything negative to your body. So in his book, he had lists of the carbohydrates, the proteins, and the fats. And he assigned values to them. He categorized each one of those lists by what was best to eat, what was second best to eat, or sources of best source, second best source, and sources that were not a good idea to use. So for example, the sources of protein that were high in saturated fats were not on list number 1, and for the most part, not on list number 2, or in very limited quantities. And when it came to the carbohydrates, it was low glycemic versus high glycemic. And so making choices low on the glycemic index, that's easy enough to do. And there are many places to look for that information. And when it came to fats, it was not choosing saturated fats. So that's how I began to eat, from those lists. That's first how I cleaned out my kitchen. Everything that wasn't on the good or the sort of good list went out of my kitchen. It either went in the garbage or it went to somebody else that wanted it to eat. And then I began eating 5 meals a day. Well, really, 3 meals that were all the same size. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner are all equal. Now, you don't eat the same thing, but it's the calorie content that's equal. You go, oh no, I have to count calories, forget it. But you don't. Now, it's the quantity of each of the foods that's equally weighted. So if you're going to have rice, well, you can have a 1/4 cup of rice, or you can have a whole peach. I'll take a whole peach any day over a 1/4 cup of rice. But anyway, so these 3 meals, and having them all equal meant that you couldn't get by with a little skimpy breakfast, and you couldn't get by leaving your big meal to the end of the day. They were all the same size, and that made it easy. And then there were 2 snacks that were about 1/3 the size of a meal. And there were good reasons for putting those in. And I won't go into all of that. And how much of each one of these things could you eat? Well, yeah, that was on the list too. First, you had to figure out how much you needed overall every day. And there were formulas to calculate for your weight, for your body measurements, and your ratios, and for the amount of activity. If you're going to sit at a computer all day, you don't need as much as somebody who's, out working on a construction site or is an athlete. Then you needed more. So all that was calculated in, and you just found your right slot, and then you knew what you had to do. And learning how to read labels. I learned to read everything on the label, what the properties were in the label. Actually, today, most of my food doesn't have an ingredient list, so I don't have to worry about that. But if by chance I get something that's been processed to some extent, I can evaluate if there's things in there that I don't agree with eating. Forget monosodium glutamate. No, I'm not going to buy it. And so on. exercise is a part of the program too. And what Dr. Sears recommended was 2 hours of walking a day. Now, that can't be a stroll. That's 2 hours of walking. And if somebody's with you, you'd have almost have a hard time with a conversation. You could do it, but it might be just a little bit challenging. You might be right on the edge. So that's the exercise. Now, of course, if you want to swim instead, or you want to bicycle instead, that's certainly possible. But at a minimum, it could just be walking. And most of us can manage that. People began asking me, how did you do that? Wow, my goodness, you have lost weight. You look really great. And you seem to have a lot of energy. I looked into it to see if it was possible to get a certification to teach or anything. Well, there wasn't anything like that. So, but people were nudging me along saying, I want to do it too. I tell them to get the book and they'd say, nah, that's too much work. Would you do my shopping for me? Help me set up my kitchen. And I wasn't ready to do that. I did go out in the community and I found restaurants that were interested in creating a menu item that would meet the qualifications. And I showed them some of what they could do with what they were already serving and how they could combine it so that it would work and fit into the program. And then eventually I wrote articles in the local paper to tell people what restaurants they could go to if they were interested. And I began teaching a class. Well, it takes a lot of commitment. I had some students that were really, really committed and serious about accomplishing, the same thing that I'd managed to do. And they're still following the program like I'm still following the program. And then there were others that I said, well, write down everything you eat and what time of day you eat it so we can start looking at, how we can change as little as possible from the way you eat now, but make it work. And they never came back with a list. They come back, oh, yeah, I didn't do that yet, and so on. So do they have a program to certify? They do now. And I had contacted them when it first came out, but they told me I'd have to be a doctor. And so I said, well, I've done fine on this. I figured it out pretty well. I've been following this for, I don't know how long then, 14, 15, 16 years, whatever it was. I would still like they're okay, but if I have to go to become a doctor before I do it, I don't think it's going to happen at age of 76. But what I'm doing today is I'm thinking about working privately with a very small, very dedicated group of people online, and just seeing what we could make work. I've modified a lot. I added a lot, and I've experienced a lot in the last 19 years. So I think I have something that could be valuable. And if you're interested in just knowing more about it or keeping in touch with me on it, what I would like from you is input on what you would look for in a program and why would you look for a program to achieve and maintain a healthy weight. What does that mean to you? What would you expect and hope to see in that program? And maybe someday to find everything in your closet still fits years later. I'm wearing clothes I got 19 years ago after I lost weight. And I think that's pretty cool because a lot of them haven't actually worn out yet. If you're interested in that, drop me an email or send a Facebook message with your ideas and your level of interest and tell me how committed you are. What would you like to see happen? And then we'll go from there with those people who respond. I think it could be really fun. So send me your Facebook message on the Organic Stretching Facebook page. That's at https://www.facebook.com and / organic stretching, large O, large S, and all one word, and end with big T, big M, all still part of the same word. That'll get you to the page. And I really look forward to getting your thoughts if this is something that you think would be of value. I think it would be really fun. And love to share with you what exciting things happened for me and watch them happen for you. On that note, thank you for being here.